All right. Looks like we're live.
Right on.
Check the Facebook feed. Make sure that we're good to go over there as well. Okay. Yep. People can see us now. And make sure that I got us locked on. Yep. There it is. All right. Well, there it is. Without further delay. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad that you can join us. We're dealing with a few technical difficulties, but nothing that's going to slow down the movement. It is what it is. What's up, Cass? What's up, Rose? Feel free to go ahead and share this out as we go ahead and get started. In case you haven't heard, you are tuned in to the Education Equity or ELSE Town Hall. And you know, I had the good fortune earlier this week of doing a dry run through with this group of people. I'm a hide them real quick. I shouldn't even have shown y'all yet that we got them all in the building. I have to uncurtain them as they go and bring them up properly. But yeah, we did a dry run earlier this week, and when I tell you that it was. Yeah, it was amazing. It's kind of like what I hear Dave Chappelle talk about, where it's the stuff that happens backstage and in rehearsal. For those of you who just watched the Michael Jordan documentary, they talk about the best games that they played weren't in the Olympics. It was actually in the practice room. That is exactly what earlier this week was, man. We had so I'm super excited for you, the audience, to be able to have an opportunity to hear from voices that you're familiar with, but you may not have seen on this platform in this manner, speaking with this type of urgency that you're going to hear this evening. And I think that could be the word for the evening, to be very honest with you, is urgency. Okay, cool. Yep. And so we got everybody loaded up. I see all our guests are in the house. And we're going to go from, I'm going to bring them up one by one. And this is how we're going to do. Tonight, we're going to be having a discussion that talks about education equity in general, but specifically what we're going to be addressing is how this plays itself out in the upcoming review of the superintendent, Susana Cordova. Now, for those of you who may or may not be familiar, those of us who have been inside of the education justice fight, we know Susana Cordova very well, and this administration. We know them well. And I believe every single person who's on this call is very familiar with the shenanigans that took place with the education, with the superintendent, or what they call the superintendent search. I don't know if most of you out there have heard the term banana republic, but that's when people get away with things and things start to happen in such a way that you feel like you're operating inside of some small dictatorship, some type of weird government type of thing going on. And so the community had made a clear call for a particular candidate to even to move into the candidate pool. Many people and many insiders that were watching this felt like the fix was in from the very beginning for Susana Cordova, because she was the heir apparent to Tom Boasberg, who summarily was booted out of the Denver public education scene and headed literally across seas to take up a puff gig overseas as a superintendent. That's how hard on the helmet that the education organizers and activists in Denver, how hot they had made it at that time. And then they went through what is called a superintendent search. And I don't think there's anybody that's on this call, and most of you who are observers could not deny the full shenanigans parade that was the superintendent search. The way that it happened, the way that they had 3 finalists and then two of the finalists just magically, deliciously disappeared and was left with just one finalist, which was Susana Cordova, to take over, and she was ushered in. And so if it would have been a small country, you would have heard calls from the UN and rights watch groups from around the world talking about that it was basically a coup or a push-in. But because it was public education, and because 75% of the constituents of public education are Black, Indigenous, Brown, people of color, it was just allowed to go down. But we have a real opportunity in front of us right now. And so what we've done here is we have collected a group of some of the strongest thinkers around this conversation around this new superintendent search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them up and have them introduce themselves, what their relationship is to public education. And then what we're going to do is ask them have them go in and ask the first question, which is how would they assess the administration's performance? So first and foremost, we're going to bring up a real fiery sister. When I actually heard of Vanessa's age, I could have swore somebody was lying to me, because sister is wise beyond her age. But when you hear her mouth, you know that she is straight from the East Side. She's a proud East Sider to the bone, and it won't take nothing about 30 seconds for y'all to recognize what that is. And so what I want Vanessa to do is I'm gonna bring her up, and I want her to introduce herself, and then I want her to give her assessment on how she would assess this administration's performance coming up. So without further ado, what's going on, Vanessa?
Hey there, Facebook. Hey there, Denver. What's good? My name is Vanessa. I'm a revolutionary born and raised from the East Side. Given that I grew up in poverty, so I've lived all over the East Side, have connections to damn near every community because I've lived there, went to 10 schools from kindergarten to 12th grade, experienced 2 school closures, plus an additional restructuring at North, and then finally graduated from an alternative ed campus that was also a charter school. So I could tell you a whole lot about the corruption and oppression of education reform policies. I recently just graduated, actually. Actually just barely graduated from Manual because I'm a Manual Thunderbolt. In 2018, thanks to Brother Jeff, he's the one who brought some accountability so I could get my diploma. But every other Thunderbolt out there is waiting for the diploma. But I graduated with my master's last week, and I'm super excited to share my vision for a liberatory education here in Denver. I'll be checking out the Facebook on my phone. So if you have any questions, please do shoot them right there and let me know.
Right on. So we want to bring up our next guest, another wonderful sister that has been working with Our Voice, Our Schools for the last year and a half or two. I remember when she first started working with us from the Schott Foundation. You know, there's the way things that are drawn up on the board, and then there's the way things really play out in life. And after she came in and saw how things were really playing out in Denver, because really, if you want to see how real shenanigans go down inside of public education, there's very few places that you will want to get a front row seat, and that other than Denver, Colorado. Some of the best shenanigans happen right here in Denver, Colorado. And so I want to bring up my sister, Allison, to introduce herself. Allison, how you doing, sis?
Hey, everyone. What's up? My name's Allison Brown. As Sol mentioned, I'm the newer person on this board to the Denver area. I've been working more nationally in the education justice movement and understanding the connections between what's happening here in Denver and what's happening all over the country. The same power players, the same dark money that's, taking over the power of community, trying to take over schools and push folks out of the system. And I'm really honored to be part of this panel. All these other folks that are on this panel today, I sit and watch their Facebook channels.
Right.
It's been a real education, over the past 3 years of being, here in Denver. But I'm excited to be part of this because I do feel like it's really important, recognizing the kind of migration of white young folks like myself into the district, we have to be in solidarity and do our work and figure out, how to be accomplices in this movement, figure out how to support great education for our kids and for the kids of our brothers and sisters in the Black and brown neighborhood. So that's where I come to for this work. And, with the Righteous Rage Institute, I've been writing a lot through the Cure newsletter. I hope you all are signed up for that. We can drop the link in the Facebook channel if you aren't. But, in terms of performance assessment, we just put out a piece last week that really goes through all the goals that DPS, that Susanna and her administration set for themselves, for the past 5 years on what it would mean to them to achieve goals, what it would mean to perform well for children, especially children of color. And, the reality is not a single one of those goals were achieved, nowhere close in terms of reducing achievement gaps, in terms of increasing graduation rates, especially for students of color, even in terms of recruiting teachers of color. So I'm excited to continue to talk about that. I hope you all will kind of check out that write-up, and we have a petition going as well, because our goal coming out of this conversation is to really put on the pressure and say, this is not the leadership that's serving our communities of color. It's also, by the way, not the leadership that's serving white communities. This system really isn't serving anyone. So it's really time for a change. So thank you for inviting me, Sol, and excited to hear and learn from everyone else on the call as well.
Wonderful. My next guest that I'm bringing up, we go back like rocking chairs, actually. He looks the same. I don't know what he's drinking on, or where what fountain of youth that he's gotten a hold of. But we go back a very long time. Brother that has been very consistent in the work over the years. I like to consider him a very good friend of mine and confidant. And many people, Brother Jeff has played a particular role as a bridge builder through so many segments of the Black community and the brown community, and those that are really searching for justice. And many people will say that he's very soft-spoken, but carries a very big stick. For DPS, however, he decided to be not so soft-spoken and even carry a bigger stick. And so this is clearly an issue that he takes and I'll let him articulate more around that, but he takes this issue very seriously. I've very rarely seen Brother Jeff break a sweat because he's ready to go 10 toes down on an issue. And education and DPS, I think he is the one that I know that has coined the saying DPS stands for don't plan on staying. And so I really am excited to hear him. Like I said, we had practice in the gym earlier this week, and he was 360 dunking and doing some monster jams. And we're like, yo, don't break your ankle yet. We need you for game time. So I want to, without further ado, a man who needs no introduction, really, I want to bring up my man, Brother Jeff. Jeff, thank you for joining us this evening, brother. It's good to have you here.
Man, it's definitely a pleasure to be here. H-Soul, everything you said about me goes right back to you. Vanessa Allison, it's just great to be able to share some space with you right now. Thank you all for your dedication. And everybody who's watching this and tuning in, you're tuning in because either you know that we are close to dismantling this system and you're working to protect it, or you are in the process of helping us dismantle the system. There is no in between. There's no gray area. There's no this and that. It's going to be something totally different. I'm someone that DPS tried to victimize, but I was able to survive and escape the shenanigans that they were trying to pull. It started early in elementary school. I went to Hallett. I went to Smith. Both of them had mobile homes in the back playground area. So that tells you the moment that I got involved with DPS, don't plan to stay, particularly if you're Black. they were having problems with population where they couldn't get us in the building. And then I lived right across the street from Smith Elementary, and they literally experimented and did something called busing. And I walked out of my front door, and I could have walked right into the front door of Smith, but I walked into the side of a bus, and they took me half the morning to a place called Slavens.
Mm-hmm.
They took the black kid to Slavens, all the way over there by Hampton somewhere. And so the moment I walked inside of Slavens, we got settled down, and then the bell would ring immediately, and then we were back on the bus, and then we head right back over to Smith, get off the bus, go back into Smith for 5 minutes, and then the bell would ring, and then it would be over again. From there, I was bused. I went to Hill Junior High. I went to McMean Elementary. I went to Gove. I went to George Washington. And all of these steps along the way were experiments. And today I've come to learn that it was racist. It was insidious to the core. It was intentional. And every one of these stops, someone was saying, we are trying to make it better. We are trying to fix it. We are trying to figure it out. This system is not broken. This system is running exactly as it was designed. It's for the benefit of some at the expense of others. And I'm fortunate to be amongst you all, because I guarantee you, we are tearing this system down. And I'm happy to help do that brick by brick, and any other way that needs to take place. But the excuses are over, and it's time to make sure everybody has access to quality education.
Thank you, brother. I really, really appreciate that. And last but not least, I'm bringing up a brother who I've known for a couple of years. And he's one of those dudes that once they came on the scene, it was just, it's like having a young Tyson when he came in onto the scene. You knew that in any given moment that it could be a first round knockout just from a jab. And so it's really been good to bring that type of energy to the fore and to have what I like to call the tip of the spear. And again, I feel almost silly having, to even be introducing the people that we have on this panel, because everybody knows them already. But I still have to give people their due. So I want to bring up a good brother of mine who we've been working together for the last couple of years, my main man, Brandon. Brandon, how you doing, family?
All right, there we go. I'm doing good, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Oh, man, it's good to have you here. We can hear you live and direct, brother.
There we go. There we go. Finally got rid of the technical difficulties. But, yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give people just a little bit of background of how you got into the education justice? Because you have a very unique path that you came through.
Yeah, definitely. I got into this as a football coach, right? And then we started noticing the inequities that existed in the far Northeast, being the only regional athletic program in the country. And what that means is we have 11 schools that make up our athletic program. And we began to see the inequities in, co-locations and, the charter schools that are running rampant in our neighborhood, which we're almost 70% charter run. We just started seeing the inequities and began to push back. And ever since then, here we are. We've got a lot of wins. We still got a long way to go. We've designed a HBCU style STEAM high school, the Michelle Obama STEAM Academy. We'll be hiring our principal the first week of June. So we're excited about that and moving forward into our 0-year planning. But just to speak on where we are right now in the current landscape of the DPS, it's worse than it was when Tom Boasberg left, right? And that's hard to wrap your mind around. And we'll get into why it's worse and specific numbers later on, as we talk. But what I really want to touch on is the lack of emphasis that this administration has put on recruiting Black talent, retaining Black talent, and ensuring that Black educators are not in a hostile work environment that is riddled with institutional racism and things of that nature at every turn. So, you know, this is something that this administration has not been good at. We've lost a number of Black leaders under Susana Cordova's watch, a number of Black teachers, and 3 Black principals. So that's unacceptable. And moving forward, we definitely have to set a criteria, if you will, or a standard that if the standard is not being met, then, you know, certain people need to lose their jobs, including Susana Cordova and the rest of her crony executive staff.
So, Brandon, since we got you here, I think we should just go ahead and start with you, to be honest. You were around for that superintendent search. And I remember, you know, not only were you around, I think they had like 11 of those things, and you were zipping from one side of town to the other side of town to attend these things. I think at even one of these things you were accosted by, I mean, that's how present you were, you know, even school board members were getting testy because you was keeping a boot on that process. And so, you know, our first question to the panel is, you know, in Africa, there's a saying that as a thing begins is will determine how that thing may end. And under the guise of how Susana came to be superintendent, and now that it's time to do an assessment of her from your perspective, which is a very unique perspective, what would you say is your assessment of this administration and its job? And let me just say this: many people would like to decry that Susana's only had a year in this position, but people forget that Tom Boasberg went and flew around the world to learn Spanish for 6 months. On sabbatical, which I didn't even know you could do that inside of DPS. There must be some real cush jobs once you pass the paper bag test and get high enough up on the ladder. But he was gone for 6 months, and the number 2, which was Susana, then became number 1 for 6-7 months. So she's been around. Right. This is not a fresh regime that we're talking about. She's been around. She was the superintendent for 6 months. Then Tom Boasberg came back. Then you and Warriors and the Ovos and Brother Jeff put the boot on that neck. And he decided to go sip pina coladas in Singapore and destroy brown kids' life abroad. Give us your assessment of
my assessment. Well, I think it's fair to start with this district has been a complete mess from day one, right? It was never designed to educate Black people or brown people in an equitable manner, right? This school system, the Denver public school system, was designed for white students. Now, in the Boasberg and Bennett era, right, things got worse. And you know, we understand it takes a lot of work and time to undo the things and the damage that has been done, right? So let's start there. With that understanding, I still don't feel like there's being a genuine effort put forth to address the racial inequities that plague the district, okay? And one of the things that I'm going to highlight is right now, there are only 300 in a district. Let me rewind a little bit. In a district of 93,000 students, 13% of the students are Black. Okay. We only have 307 Black teachers in the district, but we have, let's see. We have 4,728 white teachers.
Wow.
Let's start, if we're going to talk about equity in the classroom for these kids, let's start right there. These kids don't even have anybody that looks like them. Okay? They don't even have anybody that looks like them. There's 4,728 white teachers, 307 black teachers, and 1,127 Hispanic or Latino teachers. So you just look at the numbers there, right? And white students make up a smaller percentage of the district than Latino students, right? It's just a trip, and we start talking about the number of principals that have left the district this year. I was told that Susana Cordova was told by board members, if we lose too many black principals, then they're not going to be able to save her job. Well, we've lost 3 this year, right? That's a problem. When we look at the amount of suspensions that take place, black students are hit the hardest. When we look at handcuffings, black students are hit the hardest. Right now, performance review, I think she has an F. And I think she needs to be fired. And I think the board needs to do everything they can to get rid of her. Not only based on the inequities of race, but let's talk about this money. This money. They have paid themselves, millions of dollars in bonuses. The top tier people who get paid in the district, right? And we have all that data. You got, I'm sure, some of those slides to share a little bit later. But I think it's time for Susana to go. I think it's time for radical change in this district. And this gradualism that they're trying to pacify us with is completely unacceptable. And it's time to hurry up and move forward with somebody brand new. And that's just exactly how I feel.
Well, speaking of radicalism, let's bring up Vanessa. Sister, could you? I would love to hear, and I've heard your assessment before. I've been privy to hearing your breakdown of DPS. Could you give us what it is, what your assessment is of what you see from your perspective of your assessment of the Cordova administration and what's going on there?
I think we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of like these evaluations? Are we trying to convince, or we need to convince people that DPS is oppressing our children and youth? Or are we just simply talking to the folks who need healing, agitation, and direction on how best to pursue change because they feel and live that oppression, right? I think we should devote our time in helping community process and heal the pain simultaneously while building power for radical change. Because anyone with the common sense will know you cannot solve any problem with the same level of consciousness that created it, right? We have Susana Cordova here. We have how many of those board members that have been on here for years, and yet we still have the same problems going on, right? We are expecting people, what is the definition of insanity? Doing something the same way and expecting something different? I don't get it. Like, if we have folks who are cowards, who rather sit on the benches of complacency, who rather sit idly on the benches of neutrality, whatever the hell you want to call it, they're giving up their power. They're abdicating their responsibilities, abdicating their authority to sit and be complacent, right? I mean, what more proof do we need to tell the world, our DPS, the city, the voters, the electorate, that our kids are being oppressed? Like, I mean, come on, I'm not even a parent, and I know this. I graduated from DPS in 2009, and I still know this. Like, it's the same shit that's been going on since I was a damn kid, since Brother Jeff was a kid, since you all were kids. It's the same shit. Let me get back to my script. In any measure of any, I mean, see, this is the thing that gets me. In any measure of educational equity, educational justice, DPS is failing our students, and I like to measure our students' experience through the lens of a liberatory education, and damn sure DPS is failing that. Because they're failing to provide students an education that heals, empowers, and educates students, that cultivates critical thinking, innovative problem solving, and just healthy humans who are able to express themselves and process their thoughts who are able to just lead, just be in life. You know, our kids are, I mean, it's so oppressive. And I mean, you all been here. I've been out of state for a couple of years, so, and I do have some stats pulled up, but I don't think we need the stats. I mean, we've already have covered that. We already have the stories, right? What is our students are hurt. Our students are like my nieces, my gosh, they go to, unfortunately, they have a gentrifier preacher who's representing them, but out in District 5, my niece who was in middle school at Lake was being recruited to go to an alternative ed campus. The purpose of an alternative ed campus is to enroll overage undercredited students. Now, why are they targeting a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old to go to that? You know, the only thing that DPS and all the damn leaders, all the people within it care about is they're seeking the validation of the oppressor. And when you think about that validation then comes into play is SPF. All of the measures that they are grading our students, our schools, our district. When you look at it on a macro level, all 187 districts, it's the same shit. We're seeking the validation of the oppressor. And who are the oppressors? Oh, look, speaking of my nieces, they just walked in. Yeah, and so it's, again, they're seeking the validation of the oppressor. And so when you're looking at it, it gets me so frustrated when we are looking at metrics that are able to cover up injustice. Like if we're allowing schools to go ahead and say that mandating their students to have a graduate with mandating them that they apply to community college so that the school earns 100%. What is it called? That college acceptance rate to boost their performance on the SPF. Like, that is a sham. And they're prohibiting students. And this is the school that I graduated from outside of the manual closure, Colorado High School Charter, and the school that I worked at. Like, why are we allowing that to occur? Why aren't we encouraging students to be their best? Why aren't we cultivating young leaders? Why aren't we trusting them? Why aren't we developing young adults? Like, I truly don't get it. From everything, from the culture, from the leadership, the policies, the procedures, every damn thing is toxic. And I mean, we could sit here and go on and on and on about the problems, but I mean, you only need common sense to realize that there is oppression occurring in DPS. And so, I mean, that's really all I have to say.
Lord Jesus, listen, the Thunderbolts, they don't call them Thunderbolts for no reason.
And
She just put a thunderbolt right through DPS. Lord have mercy. Listen, we should have sold tickets to this thing. Yeah. You know, Sister Vanessa said something, and it really struck me when she said it. And she said, "This is the what happened to her at Manual. I came out of the East in '88, and I didn't even do, you know, but I went to Gove and then got shipped over to Grant in the shuffles that were taking place there. But when she said that we're dealing with today the same thing that we were dealing with then, and that just connected your story with her story, just as far as taking place now. I know that you did a lot of work specifically by being profiled out in front of a school not too long, sometime last year, as a mysterious, you know, Black man. And I'm gonna just say, Jeff, if you look threatening and you got a button-up shirt and a clean shave, then man, you can imagine what the homies on the East Side is catching, you know, with their Pendletons and their Converse. It's holy hell for them. But I would like for you to speak to what your assessment is, since you have been around. You know, I think you and I are the long tooths here, hearing Vanessa talk about, and if this was happening even in y'all guys' day, I think we have to take that mantle now. Give your assessment of what you see going on with this regime, and your overall thoughts about that.
Just think about when I said what was happening when I was coming into the system. Margaret Bobb says her 89-year-old white mom can see this. And Margaret talked about how she was able to see all of this even while she was going through the school system and as a teacher. And so my assessment is simple. If you think about the Keys case and DPS being sued for, you know, segregation and being the first school system outside of the South, that tells you how insidious this is. I had on a group of activists on my show today, and they are in support of Initiative 271. And they've been doing some tax analysis. And it was interesting for me to hear them tell me about how when Mississippi formulated their racist tax structure to impact Black people at the expense of Black people, but using those tax dollars to buttress the racist white system in Mississippi, the first state to adopt the same system was Colorado. So what's my assessment? The way Colorado does this, the way DPS does it, they do it with a smile on their face. They do it with a sense of civility, but they are very, very strategic in making sure inequity plays itself out. How is Susana Cordova doing? Well, we got to take a couple of steps back to just give you a recent assessment of this system. One, do you remember Gilpin Elementary was a passing school, and the high-paid consultants that the school board and the administration paid to do the assessments and evaluation? That system came back and showed that Gilpin was a passing school by 1 percentage point. And the system went in and took that 1 point away from Gilpin and displaced those students and gave that building to a white international school system that says if you can't speak Mandarin in the hood by the 3rd grade, you can't get in the building.
That's right.
Let's take another step forward, because when we talk about the dog and pony show that we were calling the super search or the super sham, you've got to remember, we put together a community school board and gave the administration an F. And we were going to hang the banner of shame on the building in the same way that they hang the banner of shame and color code these schools. So kids can walk through their building every day and say, I'm a part of a failing school, or I'm a part of a passing school. We were going to hang the banner of shame on the DPS administration, saying that you are a failing administration by virtue of what you're producing in terms of your output in education. At the same time we were doing that, Tom Boasberg snuck out and they had a sham of a principal search for Manual High School. So you got to remember, before the super search, there was a sham principal search to where that also landed with no top qualifying candidates to come before the community, because the administration was not able to have an HR department that could onboard quality candidates that would become the head of Manual, and Aurora and charter schools stole the top candidates from them. Then you get to the super search. So now anybody who recognizes patterns can say, okay, they are leading through a system of dysfunction. And the thing that you got to realize with Susana Cordova, she's a part of the system, and that's what the system produces inside of the classroom, which she was educated in, and now she leads it. And on behalf of that entire system, either she recognizes the woeful output and she's complicit, or she's totally blind. And so what I'm saying is, we need to move from a position of saying, what is your evaluation? Because I understand her evaluation was up and she said she wasn't ready. They postponed her evaluation on behalf of her, which says the school board works on behalf of her and she doesn't work for the school board. So the whole system is a sham, and there's a crime that's taking place every day. You mentioned McCullough, which is wholly white on one side of Colorado Boulevard, same age group, a few miles to the west or east, depending on where you're going, wholly black and brown inside of a high school. everyone sees this, but no one wants to call this crime out, and they allow it to continually take place. And until there is legal redress to where we arrest them like they're arresting our children in these incidents, if we're not going to arrest the administration, if we're not going to put police inside the administration and hold them accountable and take them to jail and prosecute them, then we're going to constantly say, just treat us a little bit better, boss. And I don't want to treat them better. I want them to be arrested. I want them to be accountable for the money. I want them to be accountable for the lives. And the way they hold us accountable, if we don't hold them accountable, then this is going to be passed on to generation to generation to generation. A crime is being taken place every day, and everyone sees it. From our high legal scholars, the court sees it, the judges see it, the politicians see it, but who's willing to stand up and say, this is against the law, this is illegal, and we're going to put it to an end?
Wow. Lord. Allison, I'm...
Do I have to follow that up?
Wow. Okay. So you're about to get initiated. It's your turn up to bat. I would like for you to give an assessment, and I want to make very clear that you said something earlier, and I really think that's the lens that I would like for you to share, is that you said that even by educational standards, that DPS is failing white parents, white students, and white children. And I think it reminds me, and I use this frame a lot, of the plantation system, where people who were the overseers, they had to be outside just as long as the slaves had to be outside. And that's why they ended up having rednecks. And that's where you get the term rednecks from, is because they had to sit outside as long as the slaves sat outside, but the masters got to sit inside. So in truth, the overseer had more in common with the enslaved in the plantation than he did with.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh. It's getting hot.
All right. Well, on that note, I guess I'll jump in.
Subpar education.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We lost you for a second.
No, it's on you. I would like you to give your assessment.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. When we talk about accountability, I think the biggest thing we're seeing is a pushing of accountability to the folks that are most impacted by the racism and the oppression. There's no accountability when it comes to the actual leadership. Sol actually recommended a really great book to me. It's called We Want to Do More Than Survive by Bettina Love. And it was incredible. I apologize in advance if I quote it like a bunch of times on the show tonight, because there is just so many amazing tidbits in it. And in it, she says accountability is part of the educational survival complex. And it's a word used by the field of education to scare educators into spirit murdering Black and brown children. And that really resonated with me from everything that I have learned about what's happening here in DPS, but also across the country. Because instead of providing good education for Black and brown students, for white students, we're more focused on teaching to the test. We're more focused on how to kind of push Black and brown children into submission and into teaching to the test, into survival mode, instead of really thinking about how do we create education systems grounded in abolitionism. And, to the question that you posed specifically to me, Sol, I feel like this impacts white families too. When I first started working with Sol, we were talking about, what are the solutions that we want in our schools? What's going to really serve all students? And we were talking about individualized student learning plans and being able to kind of have that one-on-one support so that every student, whether they're white, Black, or brown, are able to be met where they're at and are able to have rigorous education, are able to explore the things that are most interesting to them. And I brought up the community school model, and as we got to talking about it, Sol said, that concept is something that's always existed in Black, especially in the Black community. And I kind of went back and did some homework on, all the way back to Brown versus Board of Education, before we had schools that were integrated, so to speak. Not that our schools really are any more integrated today than they were, in the 70s. And in it, they talk about, while obviously the schools were widely different levels of resourcing, when you had Black schools, Black teachers, there was a political and cultural education that was empowering, that created organizing, that created power, that taught students how to hold power. And that was really where you see all the organizing that took place in the civil rights that stem from our education system. So it's no coincidence that something like Brown versus Board of Education really just served as a tool to break down that system, and to kind of use white rage, in order to actually make our school systems worse. And so what we saw was, with the passing of Brown versus Board of Education, we don't actually see any further, we don't see better outcomes for students of color. We don't see better outcomes for white students either. Instead, what we saw was a mass closing of Black schools, a mass firing of Black teachers, a pushing of students of color into white institutions. And that's kind of the beginning of this idea of education survival, and trying to say that there's kind of this one right way of doing education, of teaching kids to kind of keep your head down, follow the rules, don't make too much noise, don't think for yourself, don't be creative, don't imagine, kind of creating that space where you can't dream about freedom, you can't create the systems that will best serve you. And, from a perspective of white families, that hasn't served us either. I think there was a lot that we had to learn about the models that thrived in Black communities around education and around thinking about whole children and political education and how to hold your power. We lost the opportunity to actually be able to get the benefit of the excellence and the culture of Black and Brown education through integration. Instead, we kind of got stuck in, a white dominant way of doing things, and it hasn't served us. And when you look at the statistics, today, over half of white students in DPS are in schools that the district rates as orange, yellow, or red. So that it's not like this idea that white students are in blue and green schools and Black and Brown students are in red, yellow, and orange schools. I mean, there's some truth to that, but the actual statistics show that none of our schools are really thriving, and none of our schools are really serving white or students of color in a very exceptional way. And I think when we think about Susanna's performance, it really comes down, I mean, like Vanessa said, the statistics speak for themselves. You can look at our write-up that we put on the Cure. I mean, the data just doesn't lie. And, Brandon talked about the diversity of teaching staff. We also looked at it from 5 years ago. It hasn't budged. So for all the priority on recruiting Black and Brown teachers, the percentages are exactly the same today as they were 5 years ago. So things are not improving. And what it comes down to is not that we have to give Susanna and the administration more time. We've seen what the approach is. It's a very narrow approach of focusing on competition, of focusing on a school performance system that really is just based on whiteness. Schools that are kind of the most white, that have affluent students, they get points. They get points for just having white students that show up day one, already at a certain level of performance because of their privilege and because of the resources that they have access to. And the same is true for schools that serve majority students of color. They're getting punished. They're getting scored red off the bat just based on who they're serving and the racism that exists within our communities and the gaps of access that we have. So nothing about the strategies that are put in place are going to solve this problem. Instead, we need leadership that has an abolitionist view to education, that is going to rebuild our systems in ways that center culturally responsive education. I think all of us, including white students, thrive when we are actually taught to remember the true history, the true culture, the true contributions of Black and brown folks throughout our entire society, and that is missing from our education, and it's making us not as good of people, not as well-rounded people that can't thrive in this 21st century. So I agree with what's been said. We need a new direction. We need new leadership that understands the history and has a vision for how the future will look different.
Yeah, hold on. Let me bring you back up. And I want to make sure we bring Brandon in on here because he's doing something specifically about new directions. And we got to make sure that the school that he's bringing that he's giving birth to, we just see how they did Denver Discovery. We got to make sure that even though that they give lip service to wanting something new, that they actually follow that through. Yeah, Brother Jeff.
Just real quick, following up on what Allison was saying, this thing is not going to turn around until white parents understand that their children are being failed also. They think they're listening to a Black and brown conversation. That's what they think they're hearing. And Booker T. Washington said, you cannot keep a person down without staying down with them. You cannot hold a person down without holding down with them. And so when Allison is saying that this is impacting white students as well, the crux of DPS is this: they have abdicated to racism. That IB program was put together at George Washington because white flight was taking place. And the system came back and told those white parents, don't take your children, i.e. your dollars, out of this system and create those private schools. We'll create a system to where your children will not even be around Black and brown students. And they created that program. And from that day to this day, remember at George Washington, when Principal Michael Johnson was saying that the IB program should be open and available to everyone that can qualify, they went after him with a vengeance. The system, the parents, etc., and they transferred the principal as opposed to standing tall with him, and they allowed him to be abused in such a way. And so until white parents and white folks in this system realize that they are being underserved as well, then they're going to think they're just hearing a Black and brown conversation, and it's much deeper than that.
That's deep. Yo, so we're smoking, we're cooking with gas, and I want to bring up Brandon again. Brandon, this is a question that you probably have answered more so, especially within the last 8 months that you've been working on putting together the Michelle Obama STEAM Academy out there in the far Northeast. But the question really is, what do you think needs to be done to put us on the right track for excellence going forward?
For one, I just want to start right here is from a deficit perspective, and it kind of hinders our progress, or doesn't it does. So just let me kind of lay something out for you real quick.
Go ahead, Will.
We talk a lot about, civil rights, and, we've talked a couple of times about different cases during the civil rights era. And there's something fundamentally wrong with the whole civil rights concept. Okay? The word civil, by definition, is relating to ordinary citizens and their concerns. So, for civil rights is a problem to me because they're afforded to us by another human being. And that right there demonstrates that there's two different classes of people. If there's one class of people that can determine whether or not you're human or not, are qualified to be able to vote, or, you know, things of that nature, then there's already a split in, you know, saying that this group of people is more dominant or superior to this other group of people, right? So follow me. Follow me. Now, inside of this DPS system, we have things called the consent decree. We have the Black Excellence Resolution, if you will, right? All of these things that the district and the powers that be get to hand down to us to allow us to be on the same level playing field as white folks. There's something fundamentally wrong with that to me. I don't need any white person in any system to tell me that we're going to put this resolution together to ensure that all of this X, Y, and Z happen. All of these rights that we're supposed to be experiencing are rights that we're supposed to have, God-given rights, given to us by God. We should be treated the same because we're human. We're not human because a white man told us we are. We're human because God made us that way, right? And I'm sick and tired of having to fight at every turn to prove that we're human, because that's what this is. We have to prove to white people again that we're just as human as you, and we deserve the same treatment as you.
So, Brandon, what would you say to people who would say, but listen, you have a brown superintendent, you have a brown, so yeah, that may have made sense when you had Tom Boasberg at power, but now you have a brown person in power, so everything is all good now. It's all good in the hood.
And see, that's when we start to talk about tokens. And people that have been selected, because let's be honest, that's exactly what Susanna was. She was selected and placed in a position by somebody. There's powers that be, you know, that are unbeknownst to us in this education world. We'll call them purse strings and big money, right? They wanted her to be in charge because they know she would do what they want her to do. She would continue the same reform agenda that Michael Bennett, and Tom Boasberg have led us down this path. And she's continuing down this same path. There's no difference. The only difference is Tom would tell us exactly what he's doing and stand by his guns. Susanna lies to us. So not only do we have a reformer now, we have a liar. Somebody who's willing to come into community and lie to your face and tell you, yeah, we saved $17 million, but we need to go into this reserve over here for $11 million because we've given how many million to $3 million worth of bonuses to the top tier people in the district.
So, Brandon, since you mentioned that, we talked about we were going to bring up some receipts that you had mentioned earlier, and I want to do that real quick, so just so that our people can see that you're just not a angry hat wearing, long bearded black man who's getting on these interwebs, just trying to blast somebody. There's actually receipts that have been provided. Right now, I'm putting up a post from Margaret Bobb. Can you walk us through just real briefly what this post is talking about? And this post just came out this morning. So it seems like every single day, almost in conjunction, it's like the ancestors are working, almost in conjunction with what's happening with Black people being assaulted and being accosted around the country, almost in lock and step with that is information that's coming out of DPS showing how corrupt this system is. But Margaret Bobb made a post this morning that talked about that 1.1 million, I believe,
Right.
Can you break that down for our audience? Many of them won't be able to read the post. I just wanted to bring it up, but you already know what it says. Break it down.
Just to like back it up, there's 474 people in the district that make over $90,000, which comes to a total of 52.6 million, with an average salary of those people making 111,000 a year, right? I can go through the whole breakdown, and I'll post it a little bit later, but let me explain to you. They shuffled some people around, said they cut numbers, and they really didn't, right? And they gave themselves bonuses. So a lot of these people that don't have any contact with students, that are not in classrooms, that don't have anything to do with student outcome, they gave themselves bonuses. Meanwhile, they're saying that we need to make cuts for teachers because we don't have enough money and we need to dip into reserves. This is what's going on. And I can't see directly because I have my phone and my computer's having some issues right now. But yeah, the numbers are crazy. Margaret Bob put it all together, and it just demonstrates that they're willing to lie and put themselves first and put money in their pockets before they're willing to put money in the classroom to address the inequities that exist. And it's a damn shame.
Yes, it is a damn shame.
So let me bring you to the point. What do you see as the solution to what it is? And you talk about it a lot. I think you were one of the very first people, as soon as the board was quote unquote flipped, you started talking about this incrementalism, and you start talking about hurrying, going fast to go slow. What do you see that needs to be done in order to put us on the right track?
Well, first thing that I think, are you talking to me or is
Yeah, Vanessa's. I wanted to hear from Vanessa on this one.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a critic from the get-go about the endorsed slate and who ultimately was elected from 2019. There's a difference between, I call it three camps. There's three camps. You got your reformers, you got your non-reformers, aka incrementalists, and those who are transformers, who are radicals, right? Simply flipping the board from reform to non-reform does nothing. So what are you going for? What are you ultimately getting when you're working at gradual change that's ultimately targeted, or the goal is tolerable oppression? They are literally striving to solve symptoms of a problem. Now, what the hell are we going to get when we're sitting here twiddling our fingers trying to solve a symptom of a problem? Who is really committed besides Tay on that board to getting to uprooting oppression, from like literally uprooting oppression? Who is really bold? Who is really outspoken? Who really has the moral compass, the backbone, the jawbone, the wishbone? Like Neil Turner talked about, the 3 bones you need to be an effective leader. Nobody has that on that board, probably besides Tay, and ultimately he's just one person. So we have a board now who's mostly incrementalists who do nothing but abdicate their responsibility as board members to lead change in this goddamn board, or in DPS, excuse me. They abdicate all responsibilities to do so. They say they blame it on the lack of authority, but truly it's a lack of will, and it's a lack of imagination to lead. You know, some of those folks, I was talking about that earlier today, some of those folks are more comfortable being a follower than a leader. Then why the hell are you going to sign up to be a leader if you want to do nothing more than follow? Like, I just don't get it. Like, save your time. Go back home. Like, our kids are really depending on our leadership.
So my question then.
Yeah, I know. I'll get to the solution.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
I have all kinds of papers pulled up.
Listen, sis, take your time. Do not rush. I just want to make sure that the question was still out there. Please continue.
Yeah, no, I got you. What I advocate for is radical change. What I advocate for ultimately is a liberatory education, and I have developed a platform because You know, it doesn't take too much to agitate me. And so when I was not looking forward to studying econ and quant in grad school, I was busy developing a policy platform, a liberatory policy platform. And I believe what we should, first and foremost, Susanna, there should be no conversation of evaluation. Somebody has said that on there. Absolutely. That she should have been fired from day one. Like if we flipped the board, supposedly she should have been gone from day one, and replace her with an abolitionist. I also have read that book by Bettina Love, and I agree. We need an abolitionist to head DPS. And I think that Antoine Jefferson should be that person. But other policy or other moves that I think are fundamental to transforming DPS is implementing a critical race pedagogy and curriculum in all schools to cultivate critical thinkers and who are able to have nuanced analyses of the world. And schools should be a hub of healing, a center of empowerment, and an anchor of community activism. Therefore, we should consolidate co-located schools to transform every school into a community school with wraparound services for students, their families, and staff. You cannot expect to have, educate a young person to teach them how to be healthy and process their emotions and teach conflict resolution and how to manage trauma and how to do all these different things and facilitate some healing for one student if they're going back into a home with the same damn problem. Like, it's beyond me why we are not including in siblings, their families. The goal should be transforming society. And if that's the case, we need to be working with the whole family unit to heal, educate, empower our families. And then also the staff, because the DPS is crazy. I was worked in a school. I needed therapy, just dealing with the nonsense for 6 months. It is crazy. So I think we need resources for our educators and staff as well. They should be a part of that. Their needs to be accommodated as well, because they're the ones who are teaching our young people, right? So therefore, if they're not good, if they're not have the capacity to teach, or our staff have the capacity to facilitate healing, then what are we truly doing? This is my favorite one here, is mandating a political education graduation requirement to ensure all students understand the full history of structural oppression, complexity of the American government, various elections, and the role they play in a participatory democracy. Students should learn the responsibility of being a good steward of this earth and the many ways to compel change in the political economy of the U.S., but then also have a vision of transforming the whole entire political economy. I believe we should remove all school resource officers, reallocate those resources to mental health professionals. I believe each student should have access and have these services like meditation, counseling, all the essential skills of life, like conflict resolution, self-regulation, coping skills, stress management through various creative forms, not just writing and talking, but arts as well, music. Students need to learn how to express their emotions and process their thoughts. I grew up in poverty, so I'm barely learning, have been learning about this in the past several years of my life, or in the past decade, in my 20s. And I think our young people should be learning that at an earlier age. Yeah. We should have free breakfast and lunch for all students. Nobody should be penalized because of the environmental conditions of poverty, which is ultimately not really their fault. It's damn capitalism's fault. So why are we over here oppressing our kids and withholding food for them? I just don't get it. CSOL standardized testing. I don't even know why this is a damn debate. Like, just cut it. Quit wasting time. Do we need to talk about that more? Stop truancy referrals to court. Like, why are we wasting money in fueling the carceral system? What we should be doing is realigning energy, resources, and efforts to addressing the root causes of absenteeism. Pushing someone into the courts is not getting to the root problem of why they aren't going to school. The school is probably toxic. Their home life is probably chaotic. They probably don't have a damn alarm clock or a ride to school because we have all these damn choices going on and people don't have access to transportation. So, like, why aren't we getting to the root cause of the problem? Again, we are here. We're committed to solving symptoms of a problem and not the root. I also believe in decreasing the class size, re-envisioning educator assessments to evaluate the holistic art of teaching, not teaching to fill in a bubble. Offer personal.
Wait a minute, hold on. I think we can close court tonight. Vanessa Quintana for superintendent. Damn it! Why do we need to go any further? Why do we need to go any further and play with this right now? Sister, my goodness. And I remember this list, and it's even gotten even more refined. I'm starting to interrupt. Were you looking at that list?
No, there was just a couple more I was thinking of. Let's see. I think that we should pay each board director a living wage. There's no way in how there are 187 school districts in Colorado. Why is it that our the biggest district in the state has unpaid part-time directors? Like, if education is a value, if education is supposedly the key to success, then why the hell are we locking the door? Like, come on now. We should have committed full-time people to get solving these problems. These are historical problems. We have to uproot white supremacy, capitalism, cis hetero patriarchy in the school system. That isn't no damn part-time job. This shouldn't be someone's extracurricular activity. You know, we should be paying folks, and there's money to do so. Cut the fat at the top, you know, cut the damn paychecks for SROs, reallocate those resources. And then also the last one, because, you know, I'm a survivor of a school closure. I think we should stop school closures, stop engaging in real estate sales. I was actually reading the Constitution today on public education, Title 9 or something like that. And in their section, 9, 10, and 11 is all about land sales. It's crazy. I need to research it more, but like, we just need to stop. Like, I think that's truly the root of it. Again, capitalism, we're instilling capitalist ideals in the school system. We're socializing people, our people, young people, the Black and brown folks to fill in the labor class of capitalism so we could exploit and oppress them. And I didn't even realize it's in the Constitution that there's the right to go ahead and sell the land or be a steward of land. It's all kinds of crazy language. I need to look up that. But I ultimately believe we need some radical revolutionary leaders. We need here in this space, our educational justice space, we need to facilitate the reconciliation that we need, because every election is contentious. Every election we have passionate folks out there. And so I think we need to do healing from the past election and really consolidate power so we could flip the board from incrementalists to radicals.
Well, speaking of that, there's a question on the screen that I'll let you get to before we get out of here by the end of it. You ain't got to answer it now.
Can I say something real quick too?
Yeah, hop in there, Brandon.
Go for it. Go
Real
for it.
quick, man. Real quick. I love and agree with everything that's been said by everybody here tonight. I appreciate you guys and all the work that you're doing. And we have a lot of great ideas, right? We have a lot of I guess you could say shared vision, right? We know what we want to see in our education system and how it should function for our children. But the thing that's lacking is the plan of execution. How do we execute in order to get to that, you know, that euphoric place, right? How do we organize so that we can execute to get to that place? And another thing too, around what we need to change that wasn't really hit on is HR department in DPS.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The HR department in DPS is the driving machine behind this institutional racism, especially as it relates to what administrators, teachers, and the workers deal with. So we need to really take a serious look at HR audit that would include hiring practices, retention practices, firing practices, discipline practice, like everything. We want to see it all. And we want it broke down and disaggregated by race. And we want an outside entity to conduct this audit. Somebody that has no relation to the DPS.
Let me ask you, Brandon, do you think it's accurate? Because I've heard it been compared to that HR department is to Black and brown teachers and administrators what the overseer was to the feet of Black folks that was trying to run off of the plantation.
Here's the analogy or the comparison I make. And I saw Candace Bailey made this quote on a post yesterday and said that white women are the nurturers of white supremacy. Okay? Now, people can take that how they want to. There's a lot of truth in that statement.
Yes,
The HR department is the loving nurturer of the systematic racism that exists inside of the DPS.
Absolutely. I just want to add that we need an intersectional analysis of everything, not only race, but also class, gender, ability, immigration status. I mean, we need to be looking at everything from those lens, an intersectional lens.
Brother
And absolutely clean house.
Brother Jeff, I want you to hop in real quick, but before you do, I want Brandon to repeat that last gem so that I can type it into the box. Could you hit us with that one more time?
I said the DPS HR department is the loving nurturer of the systematic racism that exists in the DPS.
Wow. You know I'm feeling that. Brother Jeff, you feeling that?
Hey man, that's I feel like an elder whose heart is just all warmed up inside. You know what I mean? I don't feel like sometimes you just felt like you was gonna be on that hill all by yourself. And then Soul and then Brandon come. And, we're not used to seeing athletes in the activist section because the way the system works, they take the athletes and rush them right from the campus right into their own little section and keep them away from all that other stuff and just run that ball.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the warriors, you know what I mean? But they put them over there and they, pamper them and do all these different things. And then following this Black Lives Matter movement, I've been on these college campuses and I've been seeing athletes showing up at activism spaces, and they bring this team mentality to the activism landscape. Brandon brings this team. He knows that you can't win without a team. Everybody having a certain play, everybody controlling their own space and working together as a unit. That's what Brandon brings. And then you've got someone like, Vanessa, and you just listen to her and you're like, our future is in good hands.
Right.
Like, look at what our community is producing. And so what I would like to just say real quickly is this, and I'll make this announcement right now. We're waiting for Susana Cordova to do an evaluation. But Susana is going to quit that position within the next 30, 60, or 90 days. And the reason she's going to quit that position is because it's getting too hot. All of the people who have ever played this game called Hot Potato, well, they were smart enough to get out of there while there was an opportunity to get out of there. And so if Susana, with all of this heat coming from all directions, is a loyal lapdog, hound dog to the system that's going to go down with the ship, she has to be the most ignorant person on the planet to experience all of this pressure and say, but boss, I will take care of it. We already know who she is. All you have to do is read Animal Farm. All the animals weren't down with the revolution. The horse was out there enamored with the ribbons and the sugar and didn't want to have nothing to do with rebuilding something. In the next 30, 60, or 90 days, Susana Cordova, I guarantee you, she's polishing up her resume. She has done what all middle and upper middle class folks do. They get locked into these mortgages that are 50 and 60 years in the future. They put their children in these elite schools like Yale, and they got all these bills, and they get all encumbered with all this debt. So they gotta hold the potato. But Susana is on her way out. The system is never going to tell you that we are winning. They're going to always make it look like Oz just happened to go to Asia. Oz just happened to leave. Oz just happened to.
That was in my plan.
Brand was calling them out name for name early in this thing. And one by one, they began leaving. So don't panic. Susan, she's on her way out. And if you think about the people who are in this educational justice landscape, it's not just black and brown. It's everybody. If you look at the state school board race, those two state school board candidates said what? One said, as it relates to DPS, we want a forensic audit. The other one said, and I want a lawsuit. Now, these are folks that are coming in at the state level. They don't want us looking inside of the details of what's happening because a crime is taking place. Karen Olsen, and I appreciate her, she looked at Margaret Bob's data, and the system tried to give her some data, and she said, I have a PhD in statistical analysis and can't relate to the stuff y'all putting out. So what makes you think that others who don't have a background in this crime that's taking place, these fees that are being paid, this real estate that is being moved around, all of these big Washington insiders coming in, pushing over the system, they're being exposed? And Susanna, I'm telling you, if there's any Latina part of you that can hear this black man speaking to you, get out of there while you can, because it's down. Don't be there and let this crumble on top of you. Pass it to the nearest crony that just wants to get on deck and get out of there, because it's over for you, sis. And I know you don't talk like that anymore, but there's some Latinas still in you. And if you don't know you getting played, then you are farther gone than anybody could have imagined.
Right.
You know you're getting played when you're the hood, because we've seen all these games. Susanna, get out while you can. We're going to give you a little open door, and we're not going to shame you. We're just going to let you pick that new position, but go ahead and leave before we push you out.
So I don't know if people remember the movie The Matrix, but inside The Matrix, there was an individual called the Oracle. And I think that Brother Jeff has just taken on that position.
30, 60, 90 days. He doesn't want an evaluation.
Brother Jeff, the Oracle.
I guarantee you, anybody in their right mind looking at this right now, when the Deefers left the building and changed their name to the Espers,
Thanks for the answer, by the way.
A result of activism. If the big money is reevaluating and reforming itself and transforming itself into something else, I guarantee you, Susanna sees how these pieces are moving around. But here's my final point. It's not Susanna. It's not the person, because the system will always replace itself with someone who's willing to do that particular job, whether they were nurtured to do it. Remember, there were a lot of folks that were seasoned into the plantation. The responsibility lands on the board. And so the school board has a responsibility for being a governing body. And when they are approving things that are not true and are not just, they better have that board insurance in place, because a lawsuit is coming their way. And if they are not governing and that employees are running amok, this is all on the plate of the school board, not Susanna.
So then that's my question to you, Brother Jeff, before I bring Allison up to answer that question. What would you have us do as community to facilitate this process along the ways so that we have some self-governance? Sister Vanessa speaks about that eloquently. What do you foresee the community needing to continue to do or change strategy and do in order to usher in this new day you're talking about?
It's called what everybody says while they're running for office. It's said while everybody is talking about it in words and putting it up on the wall in terms of vision statements and mission statements. It's called transparency and accountability. Open up those books to folks who actually know how to look into how all that stuff is woven together. If you look at Margaret Bob and the countless hours that she was able to come up with her analysis, that is the work of the board. That's not the work of Margaret Bob. She's giving them an example of what they are supposed to be doing. And so if you look at all of the investment, like, for example, I wonder if the board was familiar with the bonds that they just sold in DPS. They just did a big bond sale just not too long ago, around January, February. I wonder how much information did the board receive when selling bonds, etc.? And if they say they didn't know about it, then they're remiss in their duty. I'm saying we hold them accountable. We look and see what's in there. And if there's a crime being taken place, we call that white collar crime. Stop sending Pookie and Ray Ray to jail for scratching up desks and doing damage to property. We're going to sue you for damage in human property, intellectual property, being derelict in your duty, and using those positions as your next stepping stone to your political career. The good news is that Scott Balderman said he's coming on the show with Brother Jeff to talk about this budget.
Uh-oh.
Here. And so I'm off Scott's helmet for right now because Tay shows up, Carrier show up, others will show up. Scott ran on the platform that he was the budget man. He's the money man. He put in $250,000 of his own money, $200,000 for a volunteer position. Well, now we're going to see what you're talking about, because if you ran on the budget, we got a budget and we got a whole bunch of questions. And guess what? If Scott is willing to hold him accountable, I'm willing to get behind him and watch him hold him accountable, because we're all about to jump on all of their helmets. And if a crime is going down, I want legal redress. I want to see handcuffs. I want to see you 557. That's what I want to see.
Hey, listen, just so that you remember, let's not forget that when they have taken black principals out of buildings with police escorts because of supposed cheating on testing and things of this nature. They have, I have personally just undergone and watched the lynching of Danielle Ashemu inside of Denver Discovery, when people were writing letters telling Jen Bacon that they don't care how she votes, but because he's, no matter what happens, they'll never let Danielle back into Denver Discovery School, no matter what. So I'm with you with this one. So we need to get a good lawyer on deck, because
Hey, real quick, Amy, right there. Follow up with Amy and let her show you about the collateralized school buildings and all of those bonds that was just sold, and have these school board members break down the bond ratings and all of the money attached. And if they don't know about that, then who's selling those buildings and who's approving all of that stuff and putting that stuff in place that perhaps they can or can't explain? I want to make sure they're able to explain it.
Well, they need to read section, 10 of the Constitution, Public Education. Well, that's section 9, but or Article 9, section 10 is all about the Land Commission and the authority they have to sell the land.
That's the board's responsibility. They got to approve that. Everything needs to be approved at the board level. And I would imagine if you're dealing with millions and billions, the board would have some say in that. In some corporations, you might have a little budget where you don't need approval for up to $10,000 or something like that. But when you're talking about millions and you're talking about who owns Manual, who owns East.
Currently the board, currently for the district, they need board approval to spend anything over $1 million. Anything, and Scott Balderman is trying to get it to where anything over $100,000 they need board approval, right? So he's trying to create more of a checks and balance system right there. But while we're right here and talking about the Board of Education and their duty, basically to check what's going on at the superintendent level and executive level with all of them, why is it? I want to go back.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Brandon got kicked off.
He was about to bring them receipts.
I would certainly say, though, if I may, there you are, Brandon.
Go ahead.
Hold on. I said, why is it that we get data and information before the school board gets their hands on it? Like, it's oftentimes where I'll call school board members and break down numbers to them, and they're like, where'd you get that? And we get it from core requests. So how come we have the wherewithal to get our hands on information and disaggregate it and go through it, and the board doesn't? Now, I also know that the board tries to get information and the district drags their feet.
That's right.
And doesn't get it to them in a timely manner for them to make a informed decision when it's time to vote on stuff.
Well,
So
so Brandon, there's one other piece that I want you to look at. I want Vanessa to look at this too. I got this little ditty. I'm gonna bring it up on screen now. It's no secret that today that we were going to have this town hall. I know that's small, so I'm gonna tell you what that says. That's a little email that I received earlier today, telling us what it's telling Black people inside of the district what the district is doing for African Americans. I'm gonna pull myself down. I'm gonna pull Vanessa down so that we can. I see Vanessa chuckling already. I got this, and I was like, "Wow, these cats are really, really funny." So basically, what this is saying is that they have created a website that is a warehouse of information. So what has come out of the African American Equity Task Force is what this email is saying. If you go on to the calendar of events, there's no events whatsoever, not even digital. We, the community, managed to put on 3 Zoom town halls with some of the most brilliant Black and brown, indigenous, and allies in Denver, and the district that has $1 billion budget can't manage nothing forward. Brandon, did you get this email that I'm putting up here? Did you get that one?
Yes, I got that email earlier today, and it shocked me because I haven't seen anything from the African American Equity Task Force since Alan Smith made his exit from the district. And now all of a sudden, in this climate of pushback from the Black community, they want to post on their website some type of qualifier or to make it look like they checked the box about addressing equity for Black people. They're full of it.
If they were going to do that, this is woefully embarrassing, because if you get it, and I'm gonna put it in the chat so people can click on it and see how utterly ridiculous. It's actually an insult. If this is what you all have done since the Bailey Report and since Sister Anita Mosby Tyler was leading up the African American Equity Task Force, is put together a website basically that had all the information that Brother Jeff has put inside of the Black book that he puts together for our community. And this is what y'all have done in the last 4 years. Listen, Janet Jackson said it way back in the 80s. I know that you used to do something, and we can't even say that y'all used to do, but what have you done in the last? Go ahead.
The problem is the leader of the equity department is Dwight Jones, a brother that's completely disconnected from the community. He doesn't even know how to say Montbello. He calls it Montebello every time we meet with him, and he's been corrected several times. Right? He doesn't have any idea about
Montebello. Where's that?
Yeah.
Where's that at?
I asked him. I want to know where Montebello is because we live in Montbello. Yeah. So, and this is who they got over the equity team, and speaking to that, they interviewed 2 people that were close to him for the superintendent, the Far Northeast regional superintendent position, right? And it's a regional instructional superintendent position. And the woman I got a chance to listen to the interview, and both people were horrible. And it speaks to the lack of leadership and the, complete lack of understanding about what type of equity is needed here in this district from Dwight Jones. The people he went out and found to fill this position, it speaks to that. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely unqualified, and he makes $199,940 a year.
Say what?
Yeah.
Hold on. Are you telling me that the head of DPS Equity, and we currently have the 3rd largest gap in the nation when it comes to Black and brown kids between white kids, is making almost $200,000 a year, and all we have is this raggedy ass website that tells us where we can go get a free lunch is that what you just said?
Exactly. Listen, he makes $80 short of $200,000. Now, if we add in the 30% of his salary that it would cost to pay for his medical insurance and vision and dental, he makes well over that. Try closer to $350,000. $370,000 is what's coming out the district's budget to pay for Dwight Jones, who has no clue about equity, who doesn't know how to say Montebello, who has never engaged the community. Right? Every time I've seen him once at the Reimagining Montbello meetings when they were still being held in person, and he ducked out of there as quick as he possibly could.
Well, they always, you've got to realize that the Mile High Income City and DPS and all of that, they're run by corporate Negroes. They're the individuals that come from different places that have no sense of space and place, and they're friends with such and such that says, yo, I could send you over there. We can go get you over there. And then you don't see them at Juneteenth. You don't see them at the Black Arts Festival. You don't see them at Black Dollar Saturdays. If you saw them in the streets, you wouldn't know who they are. I mean, this place is ripe for that. And so what hurts my feelings even more, that just got me up recently, in the midst of the Bailey report, and I can tell you nothing has been implemented because I know certain key points that I've been watching since that report came out, that I was just waiting to see if something was implemented, and it has not been since the ink was put on the paper. Here's something we got to think about. This system protects Susana Cordova.
Yes, it does.
It protects her to the point that she could do whatever she wants with impunity. The board thinks that they work for her, but check this out. In the midst of the Bailey report that outlines everything that happened with Danielle at that school, we watched that play out in real time, and all them Black folks in the system couldn't stop one part of that system from attacking a Black woman inside of that system. Can't stop any of these Black teachers from being pushed out of that system. Can't stop any of these teachers who are keeping their heads down to keep their jobs. They can't do anything to protect any of those individuals. And that means that that's an entire sham. They went after Danielle over a controversial plane ticket. But
we're talking about it.
But can't stop an entire system where people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right there, a $37 million deal just went down. They got enough attention to come down on a $300 ticket and make sure somebody's held accountable based on a controversial, if not legal, straight up reason for trying to improve the system. The system will come after that. And everybody will say, yeah, see, because we got to hold things accountable. But who holds the system accountable? Who holds the system accountable? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, when you can give yourself.
I want to make sure, Allison, that you got to listen. This is trial by fire. You got a bunch of Black and brown people around the table. It's like playing dominoes. You're gonna have to hop in here and get it while it's hot.
Well, I was just enjoying the conversation. I was like about to pop some popcorn and just like I'm just in the zone listening.
Some hot grits is what you need.
All the education. So I'll keep it really short because I know that I know we're probably running out of time here, but I just want to underscore a couple things, and that is like if Susanna's position was voted on, she would never be in that role. And that position, it's the school board gets to decide it. When they all ran, they used the benefit of being able to critique DPS to win votes. That's how they got all of our support. And so from day one, the day they got elected, it should have been immediate. Not putting her out and putting in somebody that was going to implement what they all ran on, dismantling the choice system that is grounded in racism, dismantling the school to prison pipeline that has gotten worse in the last 2 years, not better in terms of rates of suspension of Black students. So it's really, at this point, it's just, it is lip service on the part of the school board if they're not going to remove her and put in somebody that represents what the people voted for. So I think that point's been made. I won't belabor it. But the other thing I just want to underscore, I totally agree with what Brandon said around white women being often the ones that are, the ones that are really pushing the white supremacy and the oppression. And, I think what happens a lot of these times is like white folks might be willing to post on their Facebook about, being outraged about police violence against Black and brown bodies, outraged about kids in cages. And that's important. But at the same time, when it comes to the solutions, it's too radical. Like that list that Vanessa listed off, it's like, there's some people maybe wringing their wrists, like clutching their pearls. Like, is that something that we can co-sign? And so I guess all I would say is like, it's not, especially for white folks like myself, they're sitting here listening, that have gotten the advantage of all the time and education that leaders like folks on this call have put in to breaking it down for us. We need to be in the movement, but we can't show up to the movement and try and center our white issues as, the center and as what needs to get solved. I think there's a lot of need for training for white people in how to be anti-racist and how to be in community with people of color and how to be side by side without taking power in these kind of conversations. And we also need to get our neighbors and our family members to show up when schools are at risk of closure, and to show up against the issues that we see, and also to show up and be willing to be allies in the fight to dismantle the capitalistic neoliberal systems that Vanessa spoke so eloquently to. So I guess I'll just leave it with that this is an invitation as well. And actually you'll be seeing this soon on Righteous Rage. This is my sneak preview, but in the next month or so, I would say we're going to be starting exactly that, having white people leading those conversations with other white people around how to move from allyship to being accomplices, how to be in relationship in effective ways, how to recognize whiteness, our culture of whiteness, how to name that, and how to really be part of envisioning abolitionist systems that completely dismantle kind of this neoliberal approach of competition and capitalistic kind of models for education, and instead really focus on models that bring culture of all different communities, to the forefront of how we teach education. And so all this to say, we welcome you all to follow along. If you're not registered on Righteous Rage as a member, please join and stay tuned, because we have some really awesome courses coming up, and we really want to bring more folks into this movement, but in ways that really honors the leadership and the work that folks like Sol and Brandon and Vanessa and Brother Jeff, have been doing for years. So thank you all for joining, and I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Right on, Allison. Vanessa, give us your last 2-minute take, sister.
Absolutely. To the point that Brandon made earlier about civil rights, that was actually a white supremacist phrase of what he pretty much everything what he said. The first civil rights was in 1866, and then the second Civil Rights Act was in 1875, and then we had the civil rights cases of 1883, and those pretty much cemented what we have today, and that's a stratification of rights, right? And the abolitionists of the 1800s were advocating for, in the 1700s and before that, were advocating for public rights. What we need to do is we need to flip this board and elect revolutionaries who are going to wield the power of the Constitution to reinterpret it. Like there's so many people that said that public education should be a natural right. It shouldn't be a civil right. Rather, it should be a natural right. Well, then we need to elect radicals. We need to elect revolutionaries revolutionaries who are going to wield the power of that office of the legislative branch to go ahead and make these changes. It's up to the people. Do you want to continue to twiddle your thumbs and sit around and look for a solution for the symptom of a problem, or do you want to roll your damn what is this? I don't have sleeves. Roll your sleeves up. Roll your sleeves up and get to it. Like I mean, change is hard to come by. So you either going to put your time, money, and resources into some incremental change for a symptom of a problem, or you're going to put your resources, your time, and your energy and the people into organizing for liberatory education. And I believe I'm tired of suffering. I don't know about y'all. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of the oppression, and I'm ready for some change. Are y'all ready? That's my question.
So, Vanessa, I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick since you're on that. Let me get you while you're at the podium. I've seen more calls on this for having you express your leadership for running for the board. Would that be anything that the people could push you into considering?
I'll tell. Thank you,
Brandon with the fist back there.
I'll tell the people that yes, indeed, I am considering it. I'm looking for opportunities to make that so. Denver is like what Brother Jeff says, it's the mile high income state, and this is an extracurricular activity at the moment.
Right.
Well, I'm trying to make strongly considering.
I hear you.
Make that possible, my people.
Well, I'm glad you heard it here first, y'all. Thank you for your 2-minute take, Vanessa. My man Brandon, give us your 2-minute take before we get out of here, family.
Man, my 2-minute take, man, if I had that same type of energetic speech from Vanessa for our football team for pregame, we would have won every game last season.
Come on, coach.
I'm telling you, but for real, my takeaway, man, is we just have to be blunt, man. We have to get people to understand what it is, and people can't be afraid to call it what it is. What we're experiencing is flagrant.
Let me say this, Brandon, excuse me for interrupting your 2-minute take, but let me just say this real quick, family, about you. You are in the process of opening up a school. And most people that were in your position, and Jeff could testify to this, Vanessa too, they would shut the hell up and go take a seat in the corner so that their own situation didn't get messed up. And Brother Jeff said it earlier, all these black folks inside of DPS and supposedly high positions, and when a black woman is getting lynched, couldn't none of them come out there and cut the rope or throw some stones to make sure that didn't happen. And here you are, and I'm on national television. I'm gonna blow up the show on national television, making and still speaking truth to power. I just want to give you credit for doing that, brother. That takes a lot, and it's an example of your leadership. Your 2-minute take.
My 2-minute take is like I said, we just have to keep speaking truth to power. And continue to call it what it is. A lot of people are afraid to call it what it is. What we're experiencing is flagrant racism, and it's on purpose. And the will to stop it is almost non-existent unless you get down to the ground level where we are. And that's a problem. So we can't make it comfortable for people, and that's why I speak up. That's why I continue to rattle the cage, even though we're building our school, because there's still harm being done to my people. And I'm going to keep rattling the cage until I see who runs out. And I'm going to keep shining the light to see how these people perform on stage, right? They've been doing this stuff in dark for a long time, but as soon as you expose them, they start to scatter, right? And that's what we're going to continue to make them do. Susanna's going to end up scattering, like Brother Jeff said, because she can't take the heat. And we're not going to allow her to continue to scrape money off the backs of Black and brown children and line their pockets with you. Shame on you, Susanna Cordova. Shame on you for scraping money off the backs of hardworking Black and brown families. These are tax dollars that we work hard for. to see that our school system is functioning and working properly and not harming our children. But instead, you want to line your pockets so that you and a few others can live a comfortable lifestyle while hundreds of thousands of others suffer. Shame on you. And you ain't shit for that.
That reminds me. Listen, listen.
Don't sign that.
I'm sorry that I lined you up to go after that. That's like Tupac's opening line. F you and the click you claim. Like, it's hard to.
That's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. F her and the horse she rode up on.
Right,
Brother
I
Jack,
co-sign that, bitch.
brother, you are unfortunately and fortunately in both instances. The last one following up. The mic is hot. It's coming in hot, as they say. Could you give us the 2-minute take and center us as we head in for the night?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Soul, for constantly being on the front lines. This is not something that you just began doing. This is something that you've always been doing. And Brandon and Allison and Vanessa, first to Vanessa, I want to let you know that if you ever choose to run for office, I'm endorsing you right off the bat. I'm in the car. I mean, you don't have to prove anything. It's not a discussion. It's like Tay Anderson. I'm in the car.
Right.
Vanessa, I'm in the car. Candy C. DeBaca, I'm in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because, you're going to do everything right. It's not because you're going to be perfect and, I just got to roll with you because you do things that I agree with. I'm in the car because you got a heart for your community. You have a heart for the people. And I think that you and Candy and Tay are a new generation that's born to do this.
That's right.
I think that if you wanted to do something different, you couldn't do anything different because difficult times produce incredible individuals. And Vanessa, you're one of those folks. Brandon, you're one of those people. Hasira, you're one of those people. Allison, you're one of those people. The people on this thread, that's who we are. And so I would say this, Susanna, we are people that always leave the door open for our own people. We're not chastising you and on your helmet because we want to see you fall. We want to just see you work on behalf of the hopes and aspirations that allowed you to be in that position, allowed you to come out of this community, allowed you to go to North, allowed you to be at the pinnacles and at the levers to make things happen. And so I'm speaking for myself. I'm not challenging you as a human being. I'm challenging the best of you to come down here and remember where you came from. Look at your nieces and your nephews and the ones that ain't going to be able to go to Harvard and ain't going to be going to Yale and ain't going to be up there next to NASA. Them folks are going to drop you like a hot potato. And I know that you rolling hard for the team, and that's good. Here's what I want to say. If you think something can't change, look at Candy C. DeBaca's leadership when she went into a system as one and immediately made change. If you want to make it just imagine if the people were on this thread right now, if we were the school board, I guarantee you there would be change. You couldn't tell me that if this was your school board right here, that would not equate to systemic change. So, in the same way we put our hopes and aspirations behind you candidates thinking that you would flip the board, we want you to do the work that we sent you there to do. Not say, well, I'm working it behind the scenes. I'm just going to do what I can. I'm just one person. No, listen, that ain't what we sent you there to do. The only people who get to kill Black bodies, the only people who get to publicly execute Black bodies and brown bodies and just get fired are the police. The end result, folks, is clapping because a police officer got fired for murder. The only people who get to murder Black and brown children are administrations over decades and decades and decades. And what do they get? Do they get prosecuted? No. They get transfers. They get higher positions. Those days are over. And so I want to just thank everybody who's in this fight, because if you see me in the bear, if I'm in the woods fighting the bear, don't help me, help the bear. As it relates to this issue, if you're not on the side of making sure that my seeds are not going to experience what all of us experience, then you need to move out the way. And for those of you who are getting the bag, the chill, the cheddar, the scratch, the cheese, y'all taking that money, you know you all the ones that came out telling us that stop and frisk was okay because Bloomberg had money. So you exposed yourself. And now you exposing yourself by taking this money from DPS, knowing that they're betraying you, they're betraying your children. You wouldn't stand up for one black woman. And if you wouldn't stand up for one black woman and you're in a position of power, then I know damn well you can't stand up for an entire population of people who are in pain, who are in distress, who are being who are being used and abused. And so we don't trust you, but we will leave the door open and give you some compassion to come back home. In other words, like Tom Bodett said, we'll leave the light on.
Wow.
Hey, one more thing before we get off too, is I hear a lot of talk about 3 or 4 board members. We talk about Tay, we talk about Jen Bacon, we talked about Scott. All right. And somebody that we don't never really talk about is Carrie Olson, who everybody assumes is this, super liberal, radical somebody on this board that's doing all this good work for black people. Well, I'm going to just tell you right now, Carrie Olson, I don't see it. And you need to do more too. Everybody on that board needs to do more, including you, Carrie Olson, including you, Angela Cobian. Y'all not doing enough. Y'all's voices we don't hear you. Y'all's voices are silent in your board meetings.
Y'all do what Margaret Bob did. Do what Margaret Bob did.
Carrie Olson, you're not doing enough. Jen Bacon, do more. Tay Anderson, do more. Scott, Brad, do more.
Brad needs to just do something. He hasn't done anything but gentrify the north side and take a spot from Julie Bonuelos.
So y'all
tell the truth and shame the devil.
Y'all can see, my brother says, tell the truth and shame the devil. Y'all can see, listen, if we had some dominoes and we could go all night. Big Mama would have to call us from the inside to tell us to be quiet outside on the porch, cause
you better lock this game. Lock it up, Cole. Lock it.
I named every other board member except for one. Barbara O'Brien, you need to resign. You need to go ahead and step down, because everybody else that was there, that was a part of that last board and that whole super reform agenda, is gone. So you need to jump in with them and go ahead and resign. We need new, fresh blood on this board, not somebody who's willing to push this same agenda, somebody who's willing to sit back in the background and not do a damn thing to affect change for any student, not just students of color. We don't hear you talking about anything. We don't see you participating in anything. It's time for you to go. So you might as well just quit and have somebody to replace you.
Pack your bags now.
Let the community find somebody to replace you.
We sending Vanessa after somebody.
She's about to go get somebody's seat. So listen, I want to take this opportunity and just for a moment, and this is really to echo what Brother Jeff says. I am really, in all seriousness, for the last 6 months and my own personal trials and things of that nature, I'm really honored to be sitting here in front of this group of brilliant minds and brilliant spirits and people who love their people. And we talking shit like it was 7:30, and we're going on 9:10, 9:15. So we ain't even slowed up yet. They just don't even know. You know what I'm saying? Brandon's getting angry as we go on in the night. If we go another hour.
Vanessa just gave us a pregame. I thought we was just getting started.
I mean, I came prepared. I read the Constitution. I read I was getting down. I'm ready. We could keep going. but
I appreciate it. So, family, I really, again, I want to thank everybody for joining me this evening. Vanessa, Brandon, Brother Jeff. Brother Jeff just his thing just automatically clicked off. You know, his wife probably snatched the cord out the wall like, it's time for you to go, brother. But I want to say thank you. I really do from the bottom of my heart. I love every single one of these panelists. We've all been through our trials and tribulations, but yet and still we're standing side by side together because we understand that there's strength in unity, and there's nothing that divides us that is more important than our freedom and making sure that our people have justice and justice inside of education. So on behalf of the Righteous Rage Institute, I want to give a shout out to Allison. I want to give shout out to our yet to be elected Vanessa Quintana board member. I want to give shout out to one of the brothers that have brought forward a school like no other that has ever existed in the history of DPS, my brother Brandon Pryor. And of course, I want to give a shout out to all of the team members, Brother Jeff, people who made this possible. And I want to say thank you. Look forward to the next one coming. Listen, now that I got this group together, I feel like we got the dream team together. We might have to do this monthly. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all went 10 toes deep on them, and I really appreciate it. I love you deeply. So on behalf of the Righteous Rage Institute, our voice, our schools, would like to thank you for tuning in tonight. Look for more information coming forward shortly. Next week, coming up this month, Susanna's review will be happening. They will be taking this and the recommendations that we've put forward this evening into that into her review as part of a 360 review. And so they've gotten an earful from the community. They're going to have to go hire some people in order to try to tame what just happened here for free. So on that note, in the words of my sister Asada, I have to close out by saying that it is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And on that note, good night, people. Take care of yourself. H Soul, out.